Hey there, everyone. John Flores, editor-in-chief of On the Level and chief of content for the BMW Riders Association. I'm here with rider training coach and trail breaking evangelist, John Del Vecchio. Hello, John. How are you?
I'm doing great, John, and everybody out there.
Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got into becoming a rider coach.
Yeah, I don't want to go back too far, but I've been riding about 20 years, and I would say I was in between that time, I was a rider coach for the MSF for about 10 years. 5 years or so, I decided to branch off on my own and develop a curriculum more for advanced cornering techniques. And here we are today.
All right, great. And I noticed that your logo has this, right? And this
Yeah.
is why I'm calling you the trail breaking evangelist. And so my question for you today is, give me 3 reasons why trail breaking has become a thing, because when I started riding over 20 years ago, it really wasn't talked about all that much, but now it's on everyone's minds.
Yeah, so people think of the 2 fingers as trail breaking. This, I guess, would be the image that most people get in their minds. The facts are that trail breaking, I think, has been around since as far back as the 1950s, where the idea was when you're going into a corner, you want to use a little bit of brake as you kind of turn into the turn. And so over the years, I think it's just been placed a big focus on it, that it's a racing technique and that it's only for ultra fast speeds and things that the race are more appropriate for the racetrack. And so I first of all just want to start by saying that trail braking really is just a brake to throttle transition later in a curve based on your speed. So it's more the hand positioning of resting our first 2 fingers on the brake lever and rolling up and rolling down in the brake to throttle transitions. When we roll off, when we release the brakes before tip in and roll on the throttle, we call that just regular cornering. But when we hold the brakes past the point of entry into the turn, towards the apex, and then release, we call it trail braking. So really, trail braking is a secondary benefit to this brake throttle transition, what I call the secret weapon. So we could talk about the 3 reasons why I think it's become a thing more predominantly for regular riders like you and I and our friends in the RA. First of all, when you use brake throttle transitions, it's going to give you very precise speed control at any point throughout the curve from the beginning to the end. If your hand is fully curled on the throttle, we have throttle and we can decelerate with engine braking, but we lack the braking ability. So the first real main benefit is that it's going to help riders get more traction when they go into the turn. So if I'm going to be going faster into a turn, I don't want to release the brakes before I tip in. It's going to make me go faster and it's going to take weight off the front wheel. If I can hold that front brake as I tip in, I'll leave some weight on the front tire, and that's going to enlarge my contact patch, which is not evidence of more traction itself, but the weight that's put on it is what gives us the more traction. So generally speaking, the larger the contact patch, it doesn't give you more traction per se. What gives you more traction is that weight placed upon the tire. And so if we were to release the brake before we tip in, we're going to unload the suspension, lifting weight off the front tire as we need it to make that turn. So that would be probably the number one reason why people riding at a faster pace would want to be using this technique. Another one, the second one, would be that you can control your suspension a little bit better. So with proper brake throttle transitions, we can try to keep our motorcycle suspension sort of in the sweet spot.
Hey, that's not a BMW.
No, it's not. I should get out and get one. I mean, this is my son's. He's 21. I had it since he was about 3. And
Okay.
And the third would be probably just because it reduces your reaction time. if you need to go to the brakes, especially in a turn. So, the first thing they teach you in basic rider courses are do not use your brakes while leaned. And while that generally is true, if you reach and grab a handful, make an abrupt brake application while leaned over, you could consume too much traction and then cause the front tire to slide. However, if you're already in the position where you can just turn on the brake light a little bit, or just get the brake parts to come together just slightly, you can more gently weight that front tire and slow at the same time if you get yourself in trouble in a corner. I mean, if you realize you're going too fast while leaned over and your hands fully curled on the grip, now if I would like to add brake, I have to have reaction time to move my hand and then hope I don't have too much of an abrupt move on the brake. So if I am right there, I can more easily finesse that to the point that I could get that reaction time that I need. And so those are just some of the benefits of trail braking.
Okay, so again, you're advocating for pretty much covering the brake through the turn, and being deft about applying the brake on the corner entry deeper than the turn-in point. Now, what do you say to those folks? And I think we've all been there, where maybe we were younger and less experienced, and we went into a turn too hot and we grabbed the brake and the bike stood up, right? That scares people from the idea of braking into a turn. Now,
I think
has the geometry of bikes changed where that's no longer a thing, or is it the level of application and the technique?
The technique requires a very smooth transition. And what we don't want to have happen is we don't want to apply the front brake too strongly before weight has been placed on the front tire. And so that's why if we were to panic and grab a fistful or whatnot of brake, if the weight hasn't shifted forward, then we're more likely to tuck that front. Now, what's going to help you make a turn more easily, if you go into a corner too fast and you ask the guy next to you at a rally, what are you supposed to do? Most riders are going to say press more, lean more, keep looking through the turn. And that will get you perhaps through the turn. But there are other options available to you. And one of them is to slow more, right? Because the faster you're going around a curve, the harder it's going to be to make that corner. So if we can scrub off a little speed, that may help us make that turn a little bit easier. Also, on most motorcycles, when you do apply the front brake, it's going to compress the suspension and make for quicker steering.
Okay. Now, is this a technique for beginners or intermediates or advanced or all?
That's a very good question, because I've been asked and had discussions with people, is trail braking a good technique to be teaching newer riders? And I think that by calling it trail braking and say it's only used when you're going fast, I think that might be the wrong way to go about teaching this to the masses, no matter what they are as far as experience goes. I think if we can teach people to use brake throttle transitions whenever they're comfortable making that transition in a corner, they'll end up becoming a trail braking rider once they're picking up their speeds. And I think that, like I said, it's a secondary benefit of the properly timed brake throttle transition, and what people can basically use as a gauge in their head. If you keep this slow go, you can engine brake. You can use neither control. You can just coast in an engine braking situation. But when you want to slow your motorcycle more, you can add more brake. When you're ready when you need more speed, you transition to throttle. And that point is going to be different for every rider in every turn, regardless if they're in a parade ride with their buddies behind an RV or if they're going through the tail of the dragon as fast as they could.
All right. One last question. So for someone who learned how to ride 20, 30 years ago before this started to be talked about as a road technique, what's the first, how do they start learning about this relatively new riding technique? What's the best way?
The source of it is this hand position on the brake and throttle. And it's a slow go action of the hand. What I would tell any rider is that you can practice this just going in a straight line in a parking lot, in and out of your driveway. You don't have to be using this finger position just when you're wicking it up in the twisties. This can be used whenever you want to slow and go. So if you practice the transitions when the chips aren't down and there's no risk and you're, maybe going through a sweeper or a parking lot or this and that, as long as you aren't abrupt with your braking, you shouldn't really have much of an issue there.
Yeah,
yeah. Some people, John, will also say, so you're always riding around like this, and the answer is no. No, I'm not. I'm mostly riding like everybody else. It's just when I get into a situation or a riding environment where I want that reaction time from brake to throttle to be instant, when I'm in very tight turns specifically, that's when it really shines, and that's when you'll see me put my hands in this position.
Very, very cool, John. Thank you for the chat.
Yep.
And we'll let you go. Where do people go if they want to learn more about your instruction?
Well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it. Maybe we could do this again sometime. The viewers can go to corneringconfidence.com and learn anything they want to about my school, what I'm teaching. And I am offering a 10% discount on the signed copy of my book with the code BMW-RA, and my online course, 10% off BMW-RA coupon code at the time of enrollment. And I'd really be glad to answer any questions that anybody has.
Great. Thank you very much, John.